this coming year is the year where there is a true impact between your wearable devices, your wearable data, and your general activity and health data, and your healthcare, hormone health. This like medical intervention side of integrating that with health and wellness is going to be massive.
There's some data showing that by 2030, almost 10% of the country is going to be on a GLP-1. We're probably 3 to 5 years away from a consumer-facing AI application where you might be able to upload your blood work, tie in your work.
You're going to see dollars from investors that have not previously backed this space, brand name, big name investors, ones that typically focused on tech and other things that now see the opportunity for consumer health and healthcare.
Well, welcome to this week's episode of Lifts. Very special episode. It's our second one now where we look at where we review the past year and we look at the predictions that we did this time last year as well. And we do our best to forecast what we think is likely to happen in the space over the next 12 months. And as I went back, I listened to the episode that we did 12 months ago, and it doesn't seem like 5 minutes since we sat down and talked through this. And one of the things that really stuck with me is in some cases it's, things tend to seemingly move quite slowly over the sort of 12-month period. But when you sort of stretch it out a little bit longer, things seem to move quite quickly. So I'm sort of curious to review things.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And just to add too, we have Anthony Vennare back, the founder of Fitt Insider and Wellworthy. So that's new for him because when we spoke last year, he didn't acquire Wellworthy. So he's got that. Now, welcome back, Anthony. I don't think we had an episode in between. So you did the predictions episode. We're going to get into that from last year, but welcome back.
Yeah, great to be back. I appreciate you guys.
What I thought I would do, we'll start. So just as a bit of a summary, we break this down into three sections. So we've got big companies and big tech, which is number one. We've then got small to medium-sized businesses, and then we've got industry trends. So as a start, what I was going to do is review what we had. We called them flexes and fails. So flexes were things that we thought were going to be successful. And then we had fails, which obviously is pretty self-explanatory. So in the first category, which is big companies and big tech, I'll kick off with you, Mo. But your flex was Apple. Your view in 2023 was that Apple will be predominant in what they're doing, particularly in the fitness sector. And curious to get your thoughts really on 2024 in terms of what do you think what are your flexes or fails been this year, and do they relate to how you were looking at things in 2023?
I think it continues with that. I'm going to stick with another wearable company, not going to be Apple this time. I think one big flex, and we actually thought that this company was going to be disrupted a little bit by Apple and potentially may not have the growth, and that's Oura. I really think that Oura flexed, especially, recently they just closed a round with Dexcom, a partnership and a close valued at $5 billion. They've been shipping out features and products seemingly on a monthly basis. You see a new Oura feature coming out. They've launched Oura Labs. They acquired Very. They acquired Sparta Science. So they're building out features, they're making moves. I just think that they have really kind of, where a lot of us might have thought that Oura would have maybe been threatened by other players coming in, such as Ultrahuman, the Samsung Ring, what Whoop might be doing, and of course Apple and other wearables. They've somehow navigated a lot of the noise out there and said, we're going to continue to do what we're doing. We are going to double down and get more value and bring more value to our members. And they've grown. I think this has been the biggest year so far. So I think, to me, my biggest flex in 2024 is Oura.
Anthony, you were pretty bullish. You had a flex around Nike, and I think just thinking back to what was going on last year, Nike had recently made an announcement that they were going to expand their, getting into the studio market. They'd also had a partnership where they were developing a whole line of strength products, dumbbells, barbells, that kind of thing. And there was a bit of a talk around how they would perform in that category, which is fairly crowded and quite commoditized. So it's quite interesting to see how that's panned out. But in relation to 2024, Anthony, what was one of your big flex or fails in the big company, big tech sector?
Yeah, I think doubling down on what Mo said, both his prediction on Apple last year, Tim Cook, we just published it today, coming out saying his future, his legacy at Apple is health. So that's going to be massive. And then I think similarly, Aura and wearable tech in general, Garmin's crushing it right now. Their numbers are awesome. And the significance of Aura and what they're doing, to me at least, is with Dexcom and that play coming in, it is making the barrier between healthcare and health and wellness actually lower. We've always talked about it. We've always said there's companies when the money from a healthcare, when that gets into the health and fitness category, it's going to be massive. It's slowly happening, but now with this Aura opportunity, it is just absolutely insane. I think 5 billion is a cheap valuation for what it could be in the long run as you think about medical devices and healthcare and others. So for me, it's not a company as much as it is the sector, and it's the wearable sector and how that connects to healthcare. It's always been a thing. It's always been talked about, but I think this coming year is the year where there is a true impact between your wearable devices, your wearable data, and your general activity and health data and your healthcare.
Yeah, and we'll come back to that. I actually have that as a prediction for 2025. But Matthew, you had a fail instead of a flex, and you believe that the metaverse and VR was going to be a fail. And I think you were probably right on that, at least for what we've seen so far, including out. I can probably throw Apple Vision into that bucket as well. But what do you have for 2024? Do you have a flex or a fail?
Yeah, for me, it was levels. I was a real passionate levels user with this blood glucose monitoring. I did it for quite some time. Got the subscription, was really passionate, and then I, learning a bit about it, testing it for myself over time. It just became one of those things that I kind of felt wasn't as important as I originally thought it may be. And then seeing what Aura are doing in the category, I think for me, I think it's a great idea. I don't know exactly how the company are performing now, but for me, in 2024, I think that was a fail. I don't know what are your thoughts on that, Mo? Because you kind of understand these companies in a little bit more detail. But do you know how the performance of those guys are doing, particularly in the advent of Aura, Aura's recent announcement?
I think it's similar to what Anthony said in that I think that levels, super sapiens, even vary, which Aura actually acquired, which use the Abbott Libre sensor. A lot of them are built on either Abbott or Dexcom as underlying CGM. They didn't have their own CGM. And I think that a lot of these larger companies, mainly being Abbott and Dexcom, were almost treating these as proof of concepts and saying, let's partner with these companies, let's see how they're doing. But I don't think anyone's figured out what that unlock is yet. And like to your point, I was on Super Sapien, you were on Levels. I'm sure Anthony, you probably tried something out. And after being on it for a couple of months, you kind of know how your body reacts and you learn. And then the value of that initial product kind of is no longer there. But what Aura is doing is now, hopefully, and what they say they want to do is really tie food and CGM to sleep and other well-being markers. And I think that that is the unlock. So I think this truly could be a game changer. And just to bring up even Aura's competitor, Ultrahuman, they already have a CGM and they're already doing this in India. It's not They're not doing it here yet. So I think that that's where the market is going as it relates to CGMs. Anthony, any feedback from you?
Yeah, absolutely. I think Levels and others, like you said, they were first to market scaling this consumerized version of CGMs and what that means as a product, but they're still products and features. They're not holistic companies in my mind yet. There's a lot to go before standalone business of just the CGM makes sense. So the good is consumers like it, they want it, the data is helpful, but it goes back to what I was saying. How does that connect to actual healthcare? And I think seeing what Function is doing in lab testing, seeing what's happening with Aura, some of the other wearables, it's all circling. It's all circling this holistic health picture that is coming. And that's what the consumer is looking for. And, with Aura's move and Vary, because Vary was a smaller player technically in the space, there's who knows who's looking at levels right now and what that might mean, and these other wearable devices. But again, back to medical devices, and it's just this layered up. It's levels, and then the Whoops and the Garmin's of the world, but then the Abbott's and Dexcoms of the world and other medical device players. Um, I think they need to, especially now with some of the companies that are talking about weight loss as, and I can't remember their name, they're a CGM company, but they're focused solely on weight loss. And they are those that are looking at weight loss and connecting, CGM and glucose to GLP-1 and eating. I think there's going to be a ton of action in the space. And I don't think Levels and others will be standalone companies very long.
Well, we're going to move on to the next category then, which is small to medium-sized fitness businesses. Last year, Mo, you referenced a fail with the connected fitness brands, which I think in some cases probably still continues into this year. What are your thoughts on a flex or a fail with the small to medium-sized fitness businesses?
I think the flex that I'm going to go with here are these mid-market physical companies, right? So it's these high value, low price, but mid-market chains. So these are chains that have between 50 and 100 locations. Think of chains like EOS. We have One Life Fitness right here in the DC area, which just got acquired by Josh Harris at 76 Capital. So I think to me, it's these regional players, both in the US and around the world, where a lot of innovation is happening. I mean, if you go into EOS, it's a very different product than what a Planet Fitness offers. It's a very different look and feel. I think Matthew, you and I have been talking about that for some time. So to me, that is a flex, and it's not just a US flex, but I see the same trend happening around the world. And I believe that's because they're able to innovate and execute a little bit more nimbler, a bit more quickly than some of these very, very large brands that have captured market share. These are brands like Planet Fitness, Pure Gym, Basic Fit, and some others around the world, where these more local regional brands, because they could keep things a bit more closer from a travel perspective, the brands aren't as large in that they have less than 500 locations. They could really innovate. So let's just see if this trend continues. But I think for this year, that's one that I'm pretty excited about.
Anthony, yours was your fail. Funny, we just mentioned this. Was the connected fitness trackers and continuous glucose monitors? Uh,
Yeah.
what are your thoughts on a fail this year?
It's funny to call back to those because it's still so true. They're not, like I was saying earlier, they're not businesses yet. They're not thriving on their own yet. They're not standing there. And I think one thing on the small business, not fails, but the win side is similar to Mo. I'm excited for these new modality studios like Strong Pilates, combining strength and Pilates and other things, just difference, a little bit different than what was the leaders, like, the growth of the Orange Theories and others. And then quickly tons of copycats and other brands that were doing the same. And then the studio space got very stale for a while there and hit by COVID. And then obviously Solid Core and some of those acquisitions, I think, reinvigorated a lot of people. So I'm interested in what is happening from these newer modalities and these different changes in the studio business, because whether you believe in the numbers, whether you believe in the concepts or not, it is very hard to compete with I think, if done right, the fun, excitement, and programming of like a legit studio or strength conditioning facility, and seeing where those come is going to be exciting. So hopefully I see a ton of wins in that category.
Are your members frustrated by long lines for squat racks? Equipment like squat racks are in high demand. There's a new solution that will allow your clients to train all the major muscle groups, reduce wait time, and improve your overall gym's efficiency. Curious to know more? Then contact us today.
Yeah, I agree with that. I was just at Strong Pilates in New Zealand and Australia, and it's an exciting brand, and it's this new modality. But I agree, there's a lot of innovation happening there. Matthew, you had also connected fitness as a fail, and also lack of investment in the area as a fail. I think one of those things has maybe changed in 24. But for small to medium fitness, do you have a flex or a fail for this year?
I'm gonna be a little bit different. I'm gonna say I'm gonna have a flex and a flex and a fail for the same category, and I'll sort of follow on from Anthony's point. I think for me, a flex is seeing what's happening in this boutique studio fitness market with the Pilates businesses that we spoke about a lot on the podcast. So I think that's very interesting, and certainly very curious to see some of these boutique experiences taking off and being successful. I also would put a fail as well on that boutique fitness market because we had an interview just a couple of weeks ago with Kevin Yates, and he was very much talking about how some of the bigger brands are now putting together a number of boutique studios and providing, I guess, combining a lot more value by adding them all together and providing other services that a standalone can't offer. I think it's going to be an interesting, it's been an interesting year so far to see these models develop and also to see some of these almost like super clubs put together the best in class yoga and Pilates and strength studio. But very curious to see, which way which way those models sort of materialize over time and at scale.
Like the food
Yeah,
court of the restaurant scene where they're bringing all these different restaurants together and kind of centralize the scene. I feel like they did that. They tried to do that in like 2018, 19. I feel like A-Rod
Right.
or one of the athletes tried to back a brand that was doing that too. But yeah, it is funny to see. It makes sense on paper, but I don't know if it would work in actual real life.
well, there's this one that we talked about on the podcast called Club Studio, which is an LA fitness brand right here in Tyson's Corner. And I think they have about 10 or 15 in the country. And Matthew, we talked about this last week, but in Sydney, up in the Gold Coast, there was another studio that was kind of similar where they brought together 4 or 5 brands under one membership. If it works, it probably threatens the single modality boutique studios because if the quality, look, the reason why boutique works is because they're selling you an experience as much as they are selling you a workout, right? You're going there because you want the ambiance, you want the instructor, you want the whole experience. And if a gym can replicate that, and I think Anthony, you're right, like very few have actually shown to do that, other than just trimmings in the wall and a darker room. But if they can truly do that and create the experience, then I think it threatens potentially boutique clubs because it presents a better value to the consumer. But we'll see.
Yeah. Drop Fitness in Jersey, I don't know if they're still around, but they were doing it for a while um, as
Yeah,
well.
there
But
was one. There was definitely one that, as you said, Anthony, that had almost like had they shared services with the front desk and maybe showers and things, and then they had these individual like a spin studio and a yoga studio. There was these boxes. I never visited, and I don't know how well they do, but I think there's that concept. But I think the one that I was referring to was almost like a third space or a midtown athletic where
Mhm.
you've got world class yoga studios, world class spin studios that they're part of a membership to a club, but they're bringing on people and designers and equipment that almost put them all underneath one roof. Well, move on to the next section, which is trends. And last year, I'll start with you, Mo. So you very well accurately predicted that GLP-1 was going to be a flex and an important trend. What are your thoughts on what you've seen for 2024?
Well, I think when I double down, both from a strategic perspective and personal perspective on GLP-1, I'm pretty sure I don't think anyone in my neighborhood listens to this podcast, but I think half of my neighborhood is on this, is on some sort of GLP-1 because they all look fitter and slimmer and don't see them working out anymore. So no, but it's definitely grown a lot. I even launched a new company based off of GLP-1 and some things around it. I think this is going to be a continued flex. I will double down on it. And the reason for that is, and in fact, I thought it was a flex, but I think the influence of it was even greater than what I had initially predicted. No single product in our recent memory has had a greater influence, I mean, COVID aside, on the fitness industry than GLP-1. Over the last 18 months, it has now become one of the fastest growing drugs in history. And one of the two main companies in it, Novo Nordisk, is a single company that is in Denmark that has a GDP. The company is higher than the entire GDP of the country that it's based in. I mean, this is proportions that we're talking about that are just completely unheard of. And there's some data showing that by 2030, almost 10% of the country is going to be on a GLP-1. So as an industry, we've got to say whether you agree or disagree with it, or you look at it as a quick fix, you need to have a strategy around it. And it's bringing what we found, at least in the brands that we work with, it's brought a new cohort into the fold that would never otherwise have opened the app or stepped into the gym, you know, um, th- through the doors, because they are feeling better and they want to have longer lasting change. So I'm going to double down on GLP-1. I did it last year, and I'm going to do a repeat again this year if I'm allowed to do that. I don't think we had rules that I can't do it
I don't
again,
think
so
there's any rules.
I'm
No.
gonna do it.
Anthony, you had a couple of comments around as a flex around outdoor fitness, social retreats, group running, group yoga retreats. That was your flex for last year. What are your thoughts on this year?
Um, yeah, I think can't use Mo's again. I think I even said that last year. It's going to be the GLP-1 side. And to tag onto that is the hormone health. This like medical intervention side of integrating that with health and wellness is going to be massive. But the one that really stands out to me the most is consumers growing weary in this around processed food, seed oils, microplastics, these like what used to be far fringe concepts and beliefs that people were worried about coming front and center. You see it right now with like Casey and Callie Means and different podcasts that are out there and people talking about it. But and with the new incoming administration, I think there's going to be a ton of focus on what is in the food, what is in the products, what are the things that we are consuming and touching, and what does that mean for the consumer? And tagging into that, which is kind of against the grain with what Mo was saying, but also the big food, big pharma brands and the target of medication products, things that people are consuming, and are they good for you? What do they actually do for you? And diving into the impacts that they have on a short and long term.
I love that, Anthony, and I think that there's an inherent distrust in the machine that is
Yes.
our healthcare system, our big pharma, our food supply, and it is warranted. It is absolutely warranted. And again, tragically, with this United Healthcare murder that happened in New York, which is still shocking, the silver lining in it is that it's raised a conversation and everyone is like, wait, you had a health insurance issue, I had a health insurance issue, I had
Yeah.
one, right? So, and Anthony, you've been through your own journey, but I think this the awareness of all the things you talked about, seed oils, your food source, milk, insurance, everything is the best thing to happen to our society because people are asking the questions and questioning, do I trust the label? And the answer is right now, not only do I not trust the label, but I don't even trust the numbers that the label is recommending me to take, right? If it's a
Yeah.
food label or otherwise. So, and look, also we can go on this forever, but even AG1, right? Which is the largest green supplement, maybe the most successful single supplement company ever. There's questions around the integrity of what's in there. But I really kind of love that as a flex. Matthew, last year you had strength training as a flex for 24. I don't think you could have been more right because that's continued to grow in modalities and gyms. Are you going to repeat again the same one this year?
Yeah, I'm going to build on the theme. It was funny, just before this podcast, I was reading Anthony's email that plopped into my inbox about an hour ago, and there was a recognition about strength training, in particular women and strength training that he was referring to. So I think we've got it as a broad category, but there's definitely a number of spin-offs that follow along in that theme, which I recognize for this year. So one is women. Second one is the importance of strength, or the recognition of the importance of strength for longevity. So, tapping into a slightly different demographic. And then the other surprising one for me this year, which I wouldn't have predicted, but I still feel it's within that category, is Pilates. That's certainly a strength-based movement. I didn't see that coming, but it's certainly been focal to most of the conversations that we've had with people this year.
Yeah, and I think you're going to see, tagging on Mo's thing, the amount of strength training, protein intake, muscle building that needs to go along with the GLP-1 medication to actually maintain a healthy lifestyle and an overall body composition and truly not have detrimental effects is, if the numbers are going to go where everyone is seeing them on the GLP-1 side, there's going to have to be a similar growth in strength training to just counteract the effects of that medication for those people. So yeah, I think strength training is continue to grow as it did before and be hopefully picked up by these consumers that are using these medications. Otherwise, we're going to have a whole list of other issues and side effects in the industry if they don't.
Yeah, there was an interesting article. I think I shared it with you, Mo, which was called the GLP butt. And if you think about strength training and women and how important it is to kind of, the fashion now is this sort of big, round,
Well,
wholesome.
I think that's because you're in LA.
No,
Anthony and I on the East Coast.
But maybe
It's
it's
definitely
sort of
no,
a South
Anthony.
Coast
I
thing.
just want to. It's definitely more of. I'm not saying it's not here where we are, Anthony, but the whole big butt thing is definitely more prominent in the West Coast. Would you agree with that?
I don't go out west enough to have an input on this,
Maybe
but
maybe you should.
I hide out in Pittsburgh or I'm in New York, but yeah, I've seen that article too, and that's the trend of not only that, but just the sick look that can come from certain people because they're not eating and they're not training, and they literally, I mean, it's Mo was talking about like my health stuff. When I had my run in with cancer, it was you lose weight, you lose your tone a little bit, you shrink down. And I've had friends that you meet and you haven't seen them for 3 to 6 months. You're like, whoa, are you healthy? Or is something wrong? And they're like, oh no, I'm doing great. And then you get come later to find out they've been on GLP-1 medication. And you're like, you have to, you can't just stop eating. You have to lift and eat protein and consume nutrients and have your electrolytes. Otherwise, you start to look sick.
Hmm. Well, there you go. Yeah. So for those of you who are not aware, so this GLP butt is this saggy bum that doesn't really fill out your jeans and not a good look. So recommending that you're training your booty if you're using GLP-1. I think was the message in that article. I didn't think it's a West Coast thing. I've seen it in England and everywhere, but I'll go along with you, Mo, if they're not doing it in your part of the world.
Well, next time you come out, we can go sample out
Yeah.
the gyms here in the DC area.
The next section is our predictions for 2025. And I'm going to review some of your comments from 2024 to see how accurate you were. Mo, your big prediction for 2024 was big tech, Amazon, Apple healthcare tools, insurance plans. That was your big tech. That was your big tech flex for this year. I want to get your thoughts on how accurate do you think you were, and then what would your predictions be for the year ahead?
I think Anthony, you had touched on this earlier on the episode, but Apple made a lot of inroads, probably made the most noise and developments. They added a lot of software functions with iOS and watchOS releases in the fall. So I think they are going to be doubling down on that. In terms of big tech overall, I think that this has been a year of a lot of focus on AI as big tech is related, and that caused a bit of a pullback on innovation, on further innovations on health, right? And if they did any innovations on health, a lot of it, and it was largely kind of driven around what AI's impact could be on there. The big tech approach I'm going to take for this year is also going to be something which Anthony stated earlier, which is the integration of fitness and healthcare, or the convergence of the health club, focusing more on healthcare. And there are two things that are happening. You're seeing big insurance companies really come downstream and say, we want to get closer to preventative care because our rates keep on going up. And obviously, there's going to be a lot of pushback if you increase rates every single year by 15 to 30%. At the same time, the health club is trying to integrate more into healthcare, saying we could help you by keeping people healthier, by reducing injury risk, building more muscle, keeping people in better um, health shape overall, and so on. So to me, that is my big tech flex, which is more on the insurance side, and maybe big tech might get involved on developing applications that could be used for the intersection between the health club and healthcare.
Anthony, your prediction for this past year was human optimization. A wide you were mentioning that there would be a wider range of weight loss drugs available. Peptides would be a lot more available than what they were previously. So, what are your thoughts on how well did that pan out for 2024, and any predictions for 2025 in the big tech, big company section?
Yeah, I think it panned out in pretty almost a scary way. The amount of people talking about BP 157 and different things, and the transcends and the ways to wells and those types of clinics that men of all ages are on hormone replacements and peptides and weight loss drugs. And um, I think obviously driven by the Rogans of the world and the Dr. Rhonda Patricks and the More Dates, More Plates teams, there is just an insane amount of focus on that. And it's the convergence of high performance lifestyle and what, Mo was talking about is like connecting healthcare and health and fitness. But I get concerned about it going too far. People aren't working on training, they don't have healthy habits, they don't do stuff. And then now they're taking all of these medications, all of these drugs, all of these prescriptions, which you could go and get any prescription you wanted and across peptides, hormones, GLP-1s, and otherwise from 5 different companies in a matter of 7 days. So that's something that is definitely happening, but to a scary level.
I don't think that's something that unfortunately we can avoid as a society, because working out is hard. And if there's a way to design that perfect physique or that perfect feeling, and you could just pop a pill instead of working out for 90 minutes a day, people are going to take that route. It's a matter of how do we incorporate, I think, some sort of wealth. And unfortunately, like, we're seeing it happen, right? We're seeing it happen. GLP-1 has done that. I've seen people talk about TRT and HRT and all the things. And we're almost kind of saying, okay, like, what pill do you want to take to feel this
Mm.
way? It is scary, and it's a little bit dystopian, but I think that we're maybe, 20, 30 years, it's going to happen in our lifetime where you'll kind of have your perfect um, cocktail for how you want to feel. And that's kind of how things, unfortunately, I think it is trending towards.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Matthew.
Yeah, I was going to say I did an interview over the last 6 months. I interviewed Paul Chek and Dr. Jim Stepani, and we talked specifically about peptides. And I think when I'm not a doctor, and I don't claim to have any knowledge or experience in this area, but these guys seem to have spent some time studying it, and I think it is concerning how normalized this is becoming. Certainly where I am in the US, and people are almost like it's strange if you're not doing it. Now, I recognize that there are people which would benefit from this, but in the peptide space, from what I've been told, is that so much of this stuff is really unproven and untested, and what the potential long-term consequences could be are still unknown. And there seems to be this reluctance to explore all of the other natural options, which is get your diet, get your sleep, get your training, all of the basic things which we could do relatively easily and make quite a significant difference to our lives. It seems as though it's like, okay, right, let's quickly shortcut that, get on some of this stuff because that's going to solve the problems, and people are potentially going into a situation where they could have some quite serious consequences down the line. And in some ways, I think this is a great opportunity for the fitness industry to do what they really do well. But whether they can cut through the noise and the power of some of these other GLP-1s and peptides and hormone replacement therapies, et cetera, which certainly have a lot of muscle behind them, is another question.
And it ties so much into, Matthew, what you said for your flex last year, which is this evolution from fitness to holistic health, and then fitness with medical treatments. We've almost over-indexed into that, like to what Anthony was saying, where yes, you wanted holistic health to come in, you want to look for alternative medicine and alternative solutions without just getting a prescription. But because we've gotten kind of the awareness of what these peptides and these therapies could do, has gotten so much awareness because of people like, Huberman and others, and these podcasts which are out there, and new marketing materials, social media. It's kind of gone the other way. It's almost gone so deep that if you don't take it, it's almost like, what's wrong with you?
Mhm. Absolutely.
So, Matthew, do you have a flex for big tech this year?
Yeah, well, I've got big tech, big companies. I think one of the standouts for me is this "Make America Healthy" campaign. I think that's going to have, and I think and I hope it's going to have a very big impact as it sweeps across everything from food, exercise, nutrition, and so my view is that's going to have a positive impact on the industry, and I think we're going to see a lot of new ideas, conversations that come out of that. So at least I hope that that's the case. Um, I also feel that one of the points that we just mentioned is that there will be this continuation of the growth in peptides and hormone replacement therapies. And I'm not saying I'm definitely against that, but I think I can see that continuing to gain momentum in a lot of areas. I just think that doing something similar to maybe what Lifetime and Equinox are doing, and then there's others out there that I don't know the name of them, but looking at the individual from every single aspect, and then making those recommendations about what exactly they should do. Um, I think you'll start to see more of those ideas come to fruition. And I think, Mo, last week we were talking to Emma, who referred to a place that he went to where they check his blood and they provide him exercise and a number of other things around it. So in summary, Make America Healthy, continuation of the growth of peptides, HRT, but also some more of these integrated solutions that pull everything together.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Hopefully, we're not going to, hopefully health is going to transcend any political or and have bipartisan support. And I think it will. In fact, here's a fun fact. In the Capitol, the most popular amenity is the Capitol gym. So the house gym is the most, and I've had a chance to work out there, and you actually see bipartisan relationships happening, and even in the Equinox Sports Club in DC here, close to Georgetown, same thing. You kind of see politicians from both sides of the aisle coming together. So I'm hoping that this could be one issue because we live in such a politically divisive period right now that we can all align on and say, let's make America healthy.
Small to medium sized predictions. I'm going to start with you, Mo. Your prediction last year was that the AI will help to improve people's health outcomes. How do you think you did on that? And what are your thoughts for the year ahead?
Yeah, I don't think that actually panned out the way I thought it was. And a part of that is because the adaptation of AI in general, even though there's been a lot of investment in it, it's been very, very frothy. There's been little real world consumer facing applications as it relates to health, right? So we've seen Chat GPT, we've seen AI image generators, a lot of AI being used in the back end for data analysis and so on. But I think for truly having a health impact, we're probably 3 to 5 years away from a consumer facing AI application where you might be able to upload your blood work, tie in your wearable. And I know there are companies that are working on this now, but then have AI as a trusted source. That is that trust factor when it comes to health. I just don't think we're fully there yet. So my predictions, and I think we talked about this as well earlier, is probably going to be the impact of women's health coming up. So think just like I talked about last year about AI being a strategy, you need to have now one on GLP-1, but I also think that you need to have a focus on women because having a product and selling it to everybody in our industry being in health and wellness is no longer going to attract consumers because consumers understand that they're individuals and that they have to be treated separately in their cohorts because they should, because health and wellness is very physical, biological, and the same thing that works for a man does not work for a woman. And there's a lot of other factors that is helping this. Like there's more clinical studies which are more gender neutral. There are more research, more product development. People are considering male versus female. So I'm excited to see women's health being further incorporated into mainstream fitness and wellness.
Anthony, you are bullish around simple and effective offline fitness, getting people more connected, less screens, and more simple offerings. Rucking, I think, was another example that you gave. How do you think that worked for 2024, and what are your predictions for 2025?
Yeah, I think that is funny. I just talked to Ron, CEO of All Trails today, and between All Trails and rucking and all that, it's been massive. It's led by, I think I referred to it last time as the resilience consumer, the one that's the same guy, the same female, same male or female consumer that's going and consuming the um, content around hot and cold, their ice plunge, all their the cold plunge, all of that. They are the ones that are looking at rucking and the running and all trails and meetups and run groups. And it was a massive year for that. And I actually think that's going to continue in a really big way. And then the prediction for me is kind of tagging on to the same consumer that's looking at what's in their food, big pharma, other things is the environmental impact. You're starting to see now tons of startups coming, looking at mold, looking at the air, the products that you're consuming, the microplastics, the chemicals, the PFAS, and what's in. Everyone looking at what's in not only the pans they're using, but the air fryers they're using, the wellness consumer adjusting how they spend and the products they spend, which is going to not only impact their supplements, their food, and other things, but the types of actual kitchen products they use, bedding that they use, clothing that they wear, organic cotton. This wellness is everything trend is going to massively expand into pretty much every category. Nowadays on the Fit newsletter, one week we're talking about parenting and the side of that, and then we're talking about social wellness, and we're talking about microplastics, and we're talking about fitness. And I think it's that continuation and growth of that. And then another prediction, which I think is going to fuel this, is big brand name investors are going to continue to buy into this category, not in fitness, but in the ancillary ones that I talked about, the products you consume, but it's all going to be under the banner in the actual listing category of wellness. So there's going to be a ton more capital invested into this space. It's going to come earlier and earlier, and they're going to be backing what, like I said, 5 years ago would be absolutely fringe ideas. But now,
I truly agree, because as we get more macro, looking at environmental factors is so meaningful, and people again are gaining awareness of the impact that it has on their lifestyle. In fact, we might even see, and this has not been a trend yet, but are people going to start moving to healthier parts of our country, healthier parts of the world, because they are so concerned about their health and wellness? Matthew, last year, and I think you hit this again, but was around gyms potentially redesigning and creating pods or sections for recovery, for strength, and other type of applications. I think you were absolutely right. We've seen gyms redesign the floors, repurpose areas that were used for other things to add in recovery and strength. What do you think about your prediction on that area?
It's been something that we've been quite involved with ourselves as an organization, and I think I think it was pretty accurate. We've discussed this on the podcast previously. A lot of the HVLP 2.0s, where they're now looking at these separate rooms where there's a different level of membership, and finding ways to move people, upsell them from their standard $9.99 or $19.99, and provide other services, whether that be recovery or strength training or anything else that that they can use to increase the margin. So I think that will still continue. In relation to how that links to 2025, I still think that there's going to be this rethink of the workout floor. I think it started last year with creating these pods, but there's the conversations I've had this year with many operators at a number of different events. There's still definitely a balancing out of what people need, where they want to work out together or independently, and I don't think anybody's necessarily totally figured that out yet, and that may mean, as you referred to before, more specialization. Again, you referred to some of the women's health business opportunities, and I think that is going to play a part of it. And maybe these sort of one size fits all brands still need, in order to be relevant to consumers, there still needs to be a certain amount of specialization into how they communicate and the overall experience in that gym floor area. The other thing that I think sort of ties into that, which I'll be very curious to see what happens, is and it relates to the podcast we did last week, is a lot of these tech integrations. We had the gentleman on from ABC Fitness. They provide a number of services to operators, but when you start to hear about all of the different systems that people have within their businesses to understand what the consumers are doing, and when you look at that tech piece, which can start to predict when to communicate to people, how to integrate some of the different wearables that we've discussed earlier that are going to become more important, I still think there's going to be a lot more that will come out, which will bring all of that together and provide more of a meaningful experience to the consumer. Who that app is, whether that's, I doubt if it's going to be delivered solely through something like Apple Health, but who those players are that manage to figure that out in a meaningful way for small studios, mid-size and large companies, I think will be interesting. And then the final one sort of on that mid-size is, I think vending is going to be something to look at. A lot of gyms are taking out their juice bars because of the cost and the complications of running them. We've seen and discussed about GLP-1 now popping up in airports, providing you with your fix of athletic greens, and so I think we're going to start to, because of the costs of labor and the complications of delivering some of these different products, and the opportunity to generate more revenue from the high traffic a lot of these gyms will have. I think you're going to start to see more interesting solutions on the vending side.
Excited to see that too, and I agree. We've seen, I think we covered one about food as well in the UK, where there's a growth of kind of fresh food being delivered into gyms as well. So I do agree we're going to see that. Well, moving on to general trends that we're seeing for 2025, Anthony. Last year for 24, you talked about mental health becoming mental fitness. I think you were spot on for that. What do you think about that prediction for last year as a general trend, and what are you looking forward to in 2025?
Yeah, it's exciting. I'm really glad it kind of came to fruition, and that space is continuing to grow, and people looking at it not only from mental fitness, but now you're seeing when it comes to addiction and other things, people realizing that yes, there are medications and things you can take, but then in reality, there are also a ton of habits and trainings you could do to learn and better yourself. And I think that space is now again included in the health and wellness category, and seeing those types of things hopefully get better over time. And in terms of the general trends for what we're seeing, it's looking at the category of, for us, investment. We're super excited about the money and dollars that I think are going to flow back into this space. Obviously, we talked about this last year, but um, the money, this investors and partners and groups that were scared away from the Peloton and the surge of COVID dollars and things like that. I think the health and wellness category as a whole is still very early, and the investment dollars that you're starting to see flow into these early stage businesses, which are not fitness related, but generally health and other things that I talked about, those dollars are going to flow into, but the preventative and kind of what I would say prescriptive care. So we're seeing like what Function Health is doing and blood testing and all of that. But the real trend is going to be, how do you actually connect those healthcare metrics, my blood panels, my tests, my other things, to something? And then the reverse of that is, people are going to start using those diagnostic opportunities to realize, do these products work? Like you both brought up AG1. You can pretty much tell now, if you had regular panels and other things, is my overall health getting better? Not do I look better, not do I feel better, but these ways of what I think is going to be very good for some businesses and very bad for others. You're going to be able to now see if products, services, companies, trainings, do they have real health outcomes? And that's what the consumer is going to be looking for in 2025 and 2026. It's not, do these products work? Generally, do I think it? Do they have good marketing? Do they have athlete celebrity endorsements? It's, is there a true metric of I take this, I do this, it actually has an impact on the numbers behind my health. And I think it's really going to change the industry going forward. And as the money comes into that and makes that readily available, more and more people are going to do it. And no longer are we going to be able to live in a world where we throw out claims, we put out products, and we do things that don't have true health impacts on the consumer, especially the informed, educated consumer that's in this space.
Yeah, Mo, your prediction was a move away from hit training and to more of a feeling good and feeling great. So what do you, how do you think? Have you seen those shifts and also what are your predictions for the year ahead?
Yeah, with some of these, you don't know if it's just yourself. As I get into my mid 40s, and I'm less interested in about how I look and more interested in how I feel, and I can't do the hard things that I used to do in my 20s and 30s. But I do think that generally, from looking at what people are doing, it's less about breaking yourself to then build yourself back up again, and more about incrementally getting better. And people realize that instead of going all in and then pulling back, you're much better off changing incremental things in your lifestyle. And that in order to actually be healthy and focus on longevity, you don't need to have as many hit or intense workout sessions. In fact, just movement is the most important thing. And that is going to add years to your life. So I think that that is a trend that we've seen get grown and more awareness increase for in 24, and I do think that we're going to continue that in 25. I'm going to go a different direction though for what I'm seeing in 25, and that is similar to what Anthony's been talking about, the increasing capital coming into the category. So for several years we saw a lot of capital one get invested during COVID, and then almost nothing get invested in, and all of a sudden we saw a large uptick in both M&A activity and investments coming in fact, just me alone, by the end of the year, probably advised on 7 to 8 merger deals that are happening in the category. So one, I think you're going to see consolidation happening. You will see them yeah, recognize increases in outcome because they're able to have shared services and other things. So more of these smaller companies come together to have a bigger impact and hopefully a bigger valuation. The other part is also around investments. So investors are back in the industry. They're investing back into physical fitness. El Catterton acquired Solid Core. We talked about One Life Fitness and 76 North kind of coming in to acquire that. So you'll see continued and renewed interest with private equity and VCs in the category. And then you're also going to see investments happening on longevity. I mean, Anthony, you were talking about this earlier in the episode, but increased investments. So I think that trend, we saw that start this year. I think it's going to continue into 2025.
Yeah, and to tag on to that, the investment side, but what you're going to see, and I think this is the exciting part, you're going to see dollars from investors that have not previously backed this space, brand name, big name investors, ones that typically focused on tech and other things that now see the opportunity for consumer health and healthcare. And then more importantly, you're going to see them backing people that are not from within the industry. They are not the typical people that are at all the events talking about all the things and all the stuff. You're seeing new builders, new operators like, for an example, a company called Hybrid just went through Y Combinator. A fitness app went through Y Combinator. In my head, that is a massive win for our category and the types of people that are building in the space. They're not touting their 30 years experience and the this and that. It's young people building cool products backed by really big name companies and investors in unique ways. And they're not chasing general large TAMs. They're building unique products for unique people. And I think that's going to completely change the category. And then tagging back into what I was saying is if those dollars flow, it's going to change the industry. And there's no longer the status quo of you launch something on good marketing as well as, oh, I've been doing this for a while. I'm going to do this and raise money to do it. It's no, there's going to be real competition and real change across the whole industry. And I think it's sorely needed.
Yeah, I really like that. And Matthew, shifting to you, you talked about last year the spending power of baby boomers and maybe our generation to invest more in longevity. And I think by all but by all measures, we've done that. We've also seen an increase with Gen Z spending a bigger share of their wallet onto health and wellness as well. And then the second thing you mentioned is more awareness on alcohol reduction Is that something that you took on personally, or that you? It's also a trend that we've seen as well. But I know, I think it's been 3 months now, right, that you haven't had any alcohol.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm back on for December. It's holiday period, so I am drinking that. But I think a
I love
general
that. So when I visit, we can have a glass of
we can
wine.
we can have a nice glass of wine. Yeah, yeah. So to build on last year, like I think we're definitely seeing a continuation of that idea. I was reading the Beyond Active report, which I'd highly recommend anyone to check out. There's some good information in there. But there was a lady called Dr. Sin Foong from Osler Health, and she made this statement, which I thought was very relevant to my thinking about this question. She said there will be shifts in health consumerism of high net worth, where the demand for healthcare engagement is akin to wealth management. And if you go back to the earlier conversation and the challenges around healthcare, I think this is going to become really key for people, particularly Gen X and Boomers, and the amount that they're going to invest in this whole what do you call it, sort of medical health and wellness. I think that whole category, there's going to be a lot of money going into it. I think unfortunately, you can see there's a big rich poor division. So at the moment, it is something for the people that are high net worth individuals that can afford to have this this access. And I hope that changes where the costs and the efficiencies bring that down so more people can tap into it. But I definitely think that you're gonna see a lot more of that, X's and boomers, maybe not necessarily just into fitness, but I think this kind of more sort of overall health and wellness. I think that's going to become a lot higher, and I think there's going to be a lot more products that specifically address that.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. And also, we'll see more incorporation of the services into standard offerings. And if regular gyms or apps don't get personalized and get a bit more prescriptive on what they're offering to their members, they're just going to go switch somewhere else. Because the other thing that we've seen is people are showing a willingness to try new brands. I mean, Anthony, to your point, there's these apps that are coming out that are more specific. So instead of just doing a Peloton, you might say, well, that's good, but I can relate more to this particular app because it serves my needs. So that we're going to see that change happen. So I think brands have to really get more prescriptive and personalized. Well, we're getting to time. Just to wrap up on final thoughts, Anthony, last year you kind of talked about, I think you were spot on. You talked about good businesses with quality products will shine, investors will get reinvigorated and come back in, and we kind of talked about all that. Any final thoughts for predictions in 2025?
Yeah, I think for me, the prediction on the space is, as a whole, there's so much interest and so many opportunities coming in. And I think it is going to be very much a consumer driven opportunity now. It's the consumer is spending their money here. They always have, but now they realize, as you were saying, Mo, like they have the power. They don't just have to go to the gym up the street. They don't just have to go and compete with they don't just have to go to the gym up the street or buy the product that they know. They can build their kind of holistic circle of health and wellness. And I think for that reason, we're going to see a ton of mergers and acquisitions and things happen, but not in a good way. I think we're going to see a lot of products that get stale and fall off in a way that these companies are getting acquired or merging or other things are happening, but it's not because they're succeeding. It's because they haven't been able to keep up with the trends. And then I also think that as a whole, the focus on, and this is something I said earlier, but truly in my mind, food. The food aspect of fitness and wellness and health and what you eat, how you consume it, when you consume it, what that means. And hopefully you'll see a continuous end to these fad diets and fad opportunities. Like for the longest time, it was intermittent fasting and I only eat keto and I only eat this. And now you're seeing people say, okay, whole foods and the ingredients that are in them and where these foods are coming from and localized farming. And I'm buying my products up the street and I'm doing CSAs and I'm buying from local farmers that have, I could buy a share of a cow or whatever that is. So I think that is also going to change the supplement industry and the products that are, there's always going to be that bodybuilding and macro crowd and the crowd chasing protein and numbers. But this other consumer that is now looking at these holistic products, I think it's going to impact the supplement industry as well. It's not going to be about the best tasting, cheapest, or coolest marketing product. It's going to be where are these ingredients coming from? What does that mean? And not only what's in it, but Is it coming locally? Is it coming from overseas? Where is it coming from?
Mo, what are your final thoughts?
Well, I just want to double click on what Anthony said. I agree. I think our relationship with food has to get healthier. Like that can really use a workout. And I think, I've kind of learned that too. I've always enjoyed food. I'm looking forward to having meal with you, Matthew, when I head out west in the next week or two. But I think our relationship with food has to change, and we've got to understand where it's coming from. We've got to also enjoy it, not restrict ourselves, and have this better relationship with food in general. And I think that's going to play a very critical role in wellness moving forward. I think consumers are moving there. I think for me, when I look at 2025, it's interesting because when we do our own planning internally, what we started to do is to say, let's take out the years of COVID. Let's take out the 2 years after COVID. So we're going to remove 4 years and go back to 2019, but then add on the growth of wearables, the growth of AI, the growth of GLP-1 to our strategy. Because in a lot of ways, COVID had consumers index one way, whether it's at home fitness, home meals, cooking, those things. And after COVID, we over indexed the other way, eating out a lot, doing a ton of travel, not doing anything at home fitness. And that's now shifting where you've got a more educated consumer. They're kind of doing this hybrid solution as it relates to wellness. Their work environment for most people have actually changed, especially people who are investing in the space. So I think there's change that's happening in a positive way, but there's also a lot of normalization where it is a return back to some semblance of normalcy, which I think is good for everyone. Matthew, how about you?
Yeah, a couple of things that you've just said. I think this year, particularly to Anthony's point, I think there will still be further consolidation. We've referred to a number of these new products that have come out, and can they stand on their own? Probably not. How do they partner? Do they get acquired by some of these other businesses so that a more meaningful solution can be provided to the consumer? And as your point, Anthony, whether that's a good thing or not quite sure, but it does seem to be an inevitable direction when you look at all of these different solutions out there that end up becoming quite confusing and very sort of very disjointed in their approach. So I think that's something that we'll probably see happen this year. In particular, there definitely seems to be a lot more money available to come into the market as well. So I think that will probably drive some of those changes. And then the other thing that I've heard this year, which I think is good for the small player, is that some of the sort of modalities that or ideas or concepts that are delivered within the fitness space, like strength, for example, it's been very difficult. There's very little solid research that's been done on strength training, predominantly because of the costs and the incentives for doing that aren't really there. So to put millions into a research study that's going to show you how to get stronger. Well, stronger may be different because there's some sports specific applications for that. But to build muscle, for example, it's there is very little incentive to make significant funding into those areas. But what we are seeing now with a lot of these podcasters and influencers is that they are generating a lot of revenue through the information that they provide to sponsor surveys themselves, which is why some of this research now you'll see is actually backed by these various different podcasters. And just for the sake of providing the answers to questions that people are interested, I think you're going to see a lot more information, that's solid research from some big universities that will allow us to make decisions about certain things that weren't available before because there wasn't a patent on a drug or a supplement or something like that. And so if you think about that space, most of it is being sponsored by big corporations, which is probably not who we want to be influenced by. So I do think we'll see more of that. And I guess the key thing is to, look out for those bits of information and research that are not attached to anybody's agenda outside of somebody trying to get some information out, and figure out how that could be applied to more of a smaller business that's not incentivized necessarily by pushing a particular product.
I want to wrap up by asking each of you a win or fail personally for 24 and what your goals are for 2025. And it could be health and wellness, it could be anything. So, Anthony, I will start with you first.
Yeah, personal health wise was second run in with brain tumors that I had, which we talked about before, Mo, and coming out of that clean, which was huge. So, and I think went into remission in March. So second run of that, and lost, well, what was it, another 60 pounds or something like that, and wasn't able to train or work out or pretty much eat any food. And then at the same time, kind of running the businesses and doing everything we were doing. So came out of that clean and started the health journey and focused on being healthy again, which is fun, and back to working out with my friends and being in the gym and all those things. So big win there. And then on the business side, because of my health stuff and just generally after Joe and I sold our last company and the position we were in, we built Insider, it became this thing and this kind of, whatever you want to call it in the space, but we never wanted to grow it. We did it. We sent one newsletter. It's a small team. We had a good time. That was it. The opportunity just gotten so big. So we're really focused on one, growing the media brand, sticking to the positioning of no branded content, don't sell out, don't do the things that everyone else does, and be a true kind of trusted point. But now more newsletters will be coming from us. We launched Wellworthy. We have other aspects of the brand, and then our services. We launched a recruiting firm. We built a consulting group. There's so much opportunity in this space to provide true value in data and insights and news, but also just general trusted services. And for us, it's helping those people that want to work in this space, do these other things. So that's another big win. Is we launched those services this year. They've been huge for us, and they're growing at a crazy rate, and the team's really awesome. And then going forward next year, it's really just that focus on us building these services and brands. Hopefully, a few more acquisitions that we are working on will come through, some additional products and services, but really just actually focused on growth. Like we've never run an ad for Insider until recently, or things like that that we're really excited to do and grow the media, grow the services, and then for me, go and start to, we've had this megaphone and talking to tens of thousands of people, but I've never gone to the events, never met them in person, never spent the time because of the health stuff and on and off. So that'll be a big part this year as well.
Well, we're looking forward to seeing you out there more, Anthony. And congratulations again on that massive win in beating the
Yeah.
tumor. I know I've kind of known about it for some time, and I know you've also had an incredible kind of support group, which has been awesome. And I know you haven't talked about it a lot, but if you did, I'm sure a lot of people certainly would have been rooting for you. So congratulations on that.
Thank you.
Matthew, to you, are you going to go back into no alcohol? You tried the mouth tape this year. I mean, you've had some blue or green drink going on this year when you travel. What is a win for you for 24, and what are you looking for in 25?
To win for 24 is that I'm now 54 as of about a week ago, and my goal is to still be able to stay in a similar shape and have the same levels of health and energy as I did when I was 35. That's really my goal, and I've got through podcasts like this, I've learned a lot of information, and I'm still sort of excited about what I've able to learn personally, but also we've been working, as you know, for about 18 months on a strength product, which is something I've been experimenting with myself for many years, and put that into a product that we've been working on, and just about should be launching that early next year. So just getting that together and pulling together all the research and being able to come up with something that doesn't exist and allow people like me to very quickly and effectively getting stay healthy and feel good as we get a bit older has been something I've been personally excited to be part of. For next year, I think my focus, my kids, my daughter was 14 last week, and my son's a teenager next year. And it's amazing how life quickly passes you by when you're distracted with work and travel and all other things. And not to say that's not been a very important part of my life, but I've also realized that my kids are growing up very, very quickly. So I think next year is going to be a year where I want to put a lot more time into creating more experiences with my family whilst before they go off and do their own things in life. So I'm going to definitely sort of carve out a little bit more time to do that, as well as staying as healthy as I can for as long as I can. So Mo, what about yourself?
Well, I think one, you have 10 years on me. So I turned 44. this year. And it took me a long time to realize that as much as I'd love to get to myself in 35 or 25, right now, and I think you can relate because you were me 10 years ago, there's so much happening with the young kids that are running around. I also have a 15-year-old son, but I've got these two beautiful young girls, and it's just not realistic. So instead of trying to say, I'm going to be the best in the best shape of my life when I'm 45, I'm going to try to maintain. I'm going to try to say, I'm happy with where I'm at for now. And once the kids get a little bit older and I could pull back from that, because to your point, the years go by so fast. Like my 2-year-old is having full on conversations with me about topics. And it's like, and yes, some of it is about the school bus going by and the police car coming down or whatever that might be. Um, right now it's all about Santa Claus and how Santa's going to come through the fireplace and those types of things. But I think to say I'm really happy with my health. I want to maybe kind of continue and say, are the little unlocks, like smaller changes I could make? For example, maybe drinking less Celsius, maybe that's advice I can kick. What are little things that I could do? Maybe Matthew, I'll take a page out of your book and not have alcohol for a month or two and see how that feels. Focus more on that and really kind of to your point, like continue on in what I've been doing this year.
Fantastic. Well, look, that's it for today's episode of the Lifts podcast. If you enjoyed this discussion, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share it with a friend or colleague. And we'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments section. Thanks very much for listening.